Hello, and thank you for choosing to watch this video. This is part 6 in a series on imaginary what-if model kits. It features original artwork by me, and these are primarily models that I wish had been around when I was growing up in the 1970s in England. We're going to start off with some regular aircraft. I'm surprised that there have been no kits made of the various aircraft airliners that appear in the airport movies, because these were basically conventional airliners with made-up liveries for the films, but basically existing kits that would have been a pretty cheap and cheerful thing for the manufacturers to do. Basically put in new instructions, new paint scheme, some new transfers, and off you go. And in truth, in the 70s, I remember there being lots and lots of the same plane, just in British Airways or Pan Am or American Airlines, whatever the different airlines were, but basically the same parts, the same sprues. So these kits are stemming from that idea and are all based on the Airport movies. Airport was a novel written by Arthur Haley in the late 1960s, and a film was made in 1970 that was a big budget Hollywood movie with lots of stars, high production value, a lot of gloss, and was really well made. It was a great story. It was really well written. The characters were really great. It was exciting. It was thrilling. It was funny. It was just really entertaining and good fun. And it was a massive hit. One of the stars of this film is undoubtedly the Boeing 707. They give it a lot of screen time, and there's actually two featured in the plot. There's the one that Dean Martin is the co-pilot of that gets into trouble, and there's one that's stranded on the main runway at Burt Lancaster's airport, and the action sort of jumps back and forth between those two, among other things. This painting represents the stranded airliner, the one blocking the runway. And I noticed watching this, the cinematography on this film is by Ernest Laszlo, who was a great Hollywood cinematographer. One of the other films he did was Fantastic Voyage a few years before, and that has a 707 in it as well. And it struck me sort of watching this and that. I mean, the 707's a really nice looking plane, but there's really great angles on it, and it just looks really good in this film. And it looked really good at the beginning of Fantastic Voyage. It's in the Transglobal Airlines, which is a fictitious airline that's made up presumably for the book and also for the film. There are 3 sequels which all focus on disasters on board a specific aircraft or flight, and not on the dramas of an actual airport, which I think was part of the strengths of the first film. In 1975, the imaginatively titled Airport 1975 came out, and this one features a mid-air collision between a small private plane and a 747 airliner, and the collision disables the flight deck and the crew, and famously one of the flight attendants, played by Karen Black, has to take over controls and through radio contact with air traffic control, Charlton Heston. And this painting features one of the scenes in the film where the plane is flying sort of perilously low through a mountain range, and they have to talk Karen Black's character through the routine of getting some altitude in there. In the film, it always bothered me that, you see this collision sort of happens, but you never get a good look of the plane, the jumbo jet, afterward. There's plenty of film time afterwards. The bulk of the film is trying to get this thing down on the ground, but it's always photographed from the other side, not the side that has or would have the damage. I mean, they use a real plane, which is kind of commendable, but not seeing the sort of the damaged side always struck me as a little bit overly zealous in the budgeting department. So when I was doing my painting, I did it from the collision side, but I did it sort of from a rear view, so you can't really see the nose where the impact happened. So just as a little sort of nod to that. Airport 1975, a very nice jumbo jet. Airport 77 is a bit far-fetched and features a 747 that has to crash land on the ocean and promptly sinks to the bottom of the sea. There was an episode of Thunderbirds, the TV show from the 1960s, and that features an airliner that crash lands on the sea and sinks without a trace. And similar to this film, it's sort of off of the radar scanning for one reason or another. So it's hard to sort of locate it. And then when they do, they in Thunderbirds, they actually cut off the engines of the plane, which is kind of what's weighing it down, and it floats to the surface, and they can get the people out. Airport 77, without giving too much away, they have to figure out a way to get the aeroplane up. Anyway, the poster for the film shows a 747 underwater. It's all a bit incredible. I do think that the effects they did, which apparently were done quite quite cheaply. Planes crashing are really, really great, and there's a really clever mix of models and sort of full-scale ocean. It's really well done. Then there was Airport 79, the Concorde, or the Concorde Airport 79, or Airport 80 to Concorde, depending on where you were when this film was released. And this is, I think, hands down, one of the great bad movies. I yet to see any kind of review that defends this film, because it's just really silly. The plot is preposterous. As a multi-millionaire who's trying to kill someone who knows his secrets and figures the best way to do it is to shoot down the plane that she's on with one of his proprietary missiles. There's lots of great footage of the Concorde. I put in this painting that there's an F-4 drone that features in the plot to help the guided missile chase the Concorde, and I think that'd be kind of fun if you got like a little 1/4 scale Phantom in there, as well as just the Concorde itself. There's a couple of films here that have got kind of cult status. One of them is Dark Star from the 1970s, a low-budget indie directed by John Carpenter, his first film, which was one of the few sci-fi comedies. Very low-budget film, very odd. If you're in the mood for it, it's a lot of fun. If you're not in the mood for it, it's kind of dull, and I would argue either way for the film. But it's a low-budget film, and it basically follows the spaceship where these guys go around having to destroy stars and planets. So the kit would come with these sort of bombs that come out the bottom and activate and then go off and destroy things. So I figured you'd get the kit, it would have a couple of the bombs or transfers for the different numbered bombs maybe, and a little astronaut figure. I put this in a Lindbergh box. Because it was an indie film, I didn't really see it getting like Aurora or Revell or Monogram or any of the sort of big manufacturer's treatment. A little sort of oddity, probably being like a weird off-white plastic. I did it in a strange scale that was probably just to fit the box. Anyway, so I tried to sort of make it as credible as possible. Back in those days, if someone had said, let's do a kit of it, it probably would have been something a bit in the margins, as it were. Another film that has a pretty good following is Flight of the Navigator. It was made in the mid-80s and kind of feels like one of those family entertainment films that people think Spielberg was involved in some reason, but actually not. This was actually a Disney production. But it's best remembered for this incredible spaceship that has an AI, or is an AI, and it was able to change its shape. It was called the Trimaxian drone ship, and they call it MAX for short. Yeah, it was able to change its sort of configuration from this classic shape to a sort of more elongated one for high speed. It was one of the first films that used computer graphic images to look like real stuff. So the kit shows a standard configuration. Put it as 1/25th scale because it's actually pretty small. They had a full-size prop for the kid who's with it. And I thought if it was about that size, maybe about the size of a car, a little bit bigger, 1/25th would be good. It's got these sort of different bulbous shapes on it, and I think you could probably have a removable section. You could take the top piece off and then you'd see inside and see, you know, the little kid and the Max robotic eye that the kid talks to. This would be great if it was just in chrome plastic. It would just be fantastic. Fantastic little kid. It's a great looking ship. Another mid-80s film that's kind of got a cult following is a film called Enemy Mine. This was a lavishly produced film, excellent production values, bit of a box office failure when it was released, but has kind of a cult following. There's a big space dogfight at the beginning of the film, which is what I've sort of shown here, where you see the Earthbound ships in these BTA sort of fighter plane things, and then the Dracs are in what I've called a Drac Raider. They're never named in the film, but they just felt very much the way they're portrayed in that opening scene, very much like the way the Cylons are portrayed in the original Battlestar Galactica TV series, even with the sort of shots inside of the controls. And so I called it a Drac Raider. I tried to capture the look of the film. It's got quite an interesting look. There's lots of nebulas in the space backgrounds, and it all looks a little sort of model-y. And I don't know if that was something intentional they were going for, but certainly if you look at the space shots in this film and compare them to other stuff around the same time, certainly the Star Wars films, like there's a reality there, and these just look a little bit model-y. So I tried to sort of capture that in this painting. Going way back in time, there was a series of kits that Aurora did called Prehistoric Scenes, or the dinosaur kits as we remember them. And they did a whole bunch of dinosaurs and cavemen and the woolly mammoth. And to me as a kid getting into dinosaurs, I went through my dinosaur phase like anyone. And there were sort of like the big four to me. There was like the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the Brontosaurus that now seems to be called a Brachiosaur, the Triceratops, and the Stegosaurus. And the Stegosaurus was surprisingly absent from this line. I mean, other manufacturers did dinosaur kits. Stegosaurus was kind of always there. And so I've done a box art here of like, gee, if wouldn't have been great if Aurora had done the Stegosaurus. They rarely put the sort of official name that we've given these creatures on the boxes. So there was like the flying dinosaur for a pterodactyl or the three-horned dinosaur for the Triceratops. So I kind of tried to come up with a name that seemed in that same spirit for this. The kits were really simple. They had very few parts. They were snapped together. The plastic, as I recall, it was like some of the thickest I've ever seen for a kit. These things were like tanks. And you got a diorama base with it, which was always very good and in keeping with the creature. So I figured for this one, you get a little bit of ground and some shrubbery because it's a leaf-eating dinosaur. And I thought it'd be interesting if there were a couple of trees that only had a couple of leaves left on them, and then the dinosaur would have to go off into new areas, and that'd be a little bit of a story there. I put in the dragonfly that seemed to show up in a bunch of these prehistoric scenes kits. One of the things about these kits that was great was that you could, if you had enough of them and enough money to buy them, because I seem to remember they were expensive, you could put all the sort of diorama bases together. So you could have like the T-Rex next to the Triceratops, next to the caveman, and all the rest of it. I mean, it was always fun in the kits. You'd see the map and you'd kind of see where your kit would fit in that. Great fun series. I think they were pretty accurate for what people knew at the time. I mean, my rule of thumb was the three-horned dinosaur, the Triceratops, looked like the one in 1 million years BC, which Ray Harryhausen did the dinosaurs for. So that was kind of, good enough for me. Lastly, I have a piece here inspired by and dedicated to and was done for Max's Models, which is a terrific YouTube channel just dedicated to plastic model kits, the history of kits, making kits. Max is just a great host, and it's just a really fun channel. It's just really great to watch. This artwork follows the design and some of the logo work on the channel, and it shows Max and Glue Trooper, which are basically the followers, and a bunch of kits stacked on the back of his car. That's his car, and he's driving out of his workshop, which is called the Tarbis, and his cat, Honey, is sitting on the front of the car. Or rather, it's a picture of Honey and Max and the other people. The goal was to do a sort of very 1960s Aurora wacky car kind of box. It came in pretty good. Anyway, you check out Max's Models channel if you can. It's just really great fun, very informative and just inspiring, because the guy actually makes models. He doesn't just collect them and set them on the shelf like the rest of us. Anyway, that about wraps it up for now. Please feel free to leave comments, ask questions. If you like what you're seeing, please press like, subscribe to the channel if you can. Feel free to share this with your friends. More views and likes and sort of proof you get of people watching stuff, and that can enable you to do more with your channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon in another video. Thanks a lot.